At 48, Greta Garbo ordered her closest friend to burn a stack of diaries. Inside were confessions of a forbidden love affair that could have rewritten Hollywood history. The smoke rising from those pages wasn't just paper turning to ash. It was the silencing of a secret life she had fought to protect for decades. Why would one of the most powerful stars in the world destroy her own truth? To understand, we must go back to where her story began, far from the glitter of Hollywood. Greta Lovisa Gustafsson was born in September 1905 in Stockholm, Sweden. Her childhood unfolded in a working-class district called Södermalm, a neighborhood of narrow cobblestone streets, small bakeries, and laundry lines strung between crowded buildings. Her father, Karl, was a laborer often out of work. Her mother, Anna, took in washing to help the family survive. It was a home marked by poverty, yet filled with resilience. In those years, Sweden was still straddling tradition and modernity. The Great War loomed in Europe, though Sweden remained neutral. The cultural fabric of Stockholm was a mixture of Lutheran restraint and hints of artistic experimentation, especially in theater and silent cinema. Young Greta grew up in a world where women were expected to marry, raise children, and keep their voices soft. But already, she seemed different. As a child, she was shy, withdrawn, and uneasy in large crowds. She preferred to disappear into her imagination, inventing dialogues and scenarios as she brushed her mother's wet laundry or carried groceries down the street. She often played with costumes, wrapping scarves into makeshift gowns, staring into a cracked mirror, and whispering lines only she could hear. When her father died of tuberculosis in 1920, Greta was only 14. The loss devastated the family, but it also marked a turning point. She left school and took work at a barber shop, sweeping floors and eventually moving to a department store where she modeled hats for advertisements. By then, the jazz age was sweeping across Europe, though in Sweden its pulse was faint compared to Berlin or Paris. Still, motion pictures had begun captivating the public. Silent films with shimmering stars like Asta Nielsen and Pola Negri were symbols of modern womanhood, mixing danger and allure. Greta watched those faces on screen and felt something stir, an idea that she, too, might escape the narrow path laid out for a poor Stockholm girl. At 17, she enrolled at the Royal Dramatic Theatre School, one of the most prestigious acting academies in Sweden. It was here that she came under the guidance of Moritz Stiller, a charismatic director known for his bold films and mercurial temperament. Stiller immediately saw in her something rare, not just beauty, but mystery. He polished her awkwardness into presence, teaching her how to use silence as power, how to let her eyes communicate what words could not. He also gave her a new name, Greta Garbo. By the early 1922s, Europe was rebuilding from war. Cinema was exploding as the new art form of the century, and Garbo was beginning to step out of the shadows. Her path was shifting from Stockholm's grey courtyards to the larger stage of international fame. But as she prepared to leave Sweden behind, she carried with her a sense of loss, shyness, and a guarded heart. When Greta Garbo arrived in Hollywood in 1925, she was barely 20. She stepped off the boat with wide eyes, carrying only a few trunks and the guidance of Moritz Stiller. He had insisted MGM bring her over, convinced she could be their next great star. The studio executives were skeptical at first. She was tall, her face unconventional by Hollywood standards, her English non-existent. But on camera, she was magnetic. Her first American film, Torrent in 1926, paired her with Ricardo Cortez. It wasn't the story that captivated audiences, it was her. The camera lingered on her eyes, on her stillness, and audiences leaned in. MGM quickly realized they had something unique. Unlike other actresses who chased attention with glamour or chatter, Garbo remained aloof. She avoided interviews, rarely smiled in public, and spoke with a heavy accent that only heightened her mystery. Stiller, however, clashed with MGM executives. He wanted control, but Louis B. Mayer refused. By the end of the decade, Stiller was gone, and Garbo was left alone in a foreign land. Yet, she thrived. In Flesh and the Devil, 1926. Opposite John Gilbert, sparks ignited both on screen and off. Their kiss, filmed in a haze of soft light, shocked audiences with its intensity. Rumors of their romance spread quickly, fueling her allure. By the late 1920s, Garbo was one of the most bankable stars in Hollywood. She was nicknamed the Swedish Sphinx, her enigmatic aura turning every premiere into a frenzy. When sound came to cinema, many feared her thick accent would end her career. Instead, MGM turned it into an event. The 1930 release of Anna Christie was promoted with the line, "Garbo talks." Her first words, "Give me a whiskey," ginger ale on the side, thrilled audiences. She transitioned to sound effortlessly, her voice deep and husky, perfectly matched to her dramatic presence. Films like Mata Hari, 1931, Queen Christina, 1933, and Camille, 1936, cemented her as Hollywood royalty. She portrayed queens, courtesans, and tragic heroines, always with that air of untouchable elegance. Men desired her, women admired her, and the press could only speculate about her private life. But with each success came pressure. MGM controlled every aspect of her image. Contracts demanded she attend publicity events, yet she refused most interviews. She became famous for disappearing into her bungalow, for keeping the world at arm's length. Behind her guarded exterior, though, Garbo was already wrestling with secrets that could never reach the silver screen. The higher she climbed, the more dangerous it became to live fully as herself. The glitter of Hollywood fame was dazzling, but it came with shadows she would soon inhabit in ways few could ever imagine. Beneath the gowns, the studio portraits, and the carefully managed publicity, Greta Garbo's private life told another story. In the coded world of early Hollywood, she navigated friendships, flirtations, and romances that could never be spoken aloud. Biographers have pieced together fragments, letters, and whispers, painting a portrait of a woman who loved passionately, but always in the shadows. In the 1920s, during her early years in Hollywood, Garbo became close to actress Lillian Tashman. They were often seen at private gatherings, where men and women could relax beyond the glare of the press. Friends recalled their laughter, their conspiratorial whispers, and their ability to vanish together when parties grew too crowded. In an industry where studios paired stars with fabricated romances, these private bonds carried more truth than any magazine spread. But it was in the 1930s that Garbo's most significant secret relationship began. She met Mercedes de Acosta, a playwright and socialite known for her striking beauty and bold personality. De Acosta had already been linked to other famous women, from Isadora Duncan to Marlene Dietrich. When she and Garbo crossed paths, the attraction was instant. Letters between them, some that survived the flames when Garbo ordered her diaries destroyed, hint at a deep intimacy. Garbo wrote of longing, of missing the scent of de Acosta's presence, of feeling safe only in her arms. They traveled discreetly, meeting in New York, Paris, and occasionally on the quiet beaches of Southern California. In photographs, they are rarely side by side, but behind the scenes, they shared private afternoons, coded phone calls, and love that had to remain invisible. The secrecy weighed heavily. Studios enforced morality clauses, and even a rumor of same-sex affection could end a career. Garbo learned to use her silence as a shield. She neither confirmed nor denied, and in that ambiguity, she protected herself. Marlene Dietrich's name also circles Garbo's story. Both were European imports, both icons of allure, and rumors suggest a tempestuous affair in the early 1930s. If true, it was a clash of equals, Garbo with her sphinx-like stillness, Dietrich with her bold Berlin charisma. Some accounts describe them as rivals, others as lovers, perhaps both at different times. What is certain is that Garbo's relationships with women were not fleeting curiosities. They were central to her emotional life. Even as the public was fed tales of John Gilbert and other men, to Garbo, the price of love was vigilance. She had to trust only a handful of people, keep letters locked away, and disguise intimacy as friendship. Every smile she gave on screen, every close-up drenched in light, was balanced by the mid-1930 seconds. Greta Garbo stood at the summit of fame. Yet behind the glitter, she felt increasingly trapped. Hollywood's rumor mills churned endlessly, and whispers about her personal life began to reach the studio bosses. The press, hungry for scandal, circled around her reclusive habits and her refusal to play the smiling starlet. Why was she always alone? Why did she avoid men at parties? Questions sharpened into suspicion. MGM executives grew nervous. The Hays Code, newly enforced, demanded strict moral appearances from stars. Any suggestion of homosexuality could destroy a career and tarnish a studio. Garbo's silence, once a weapon, now became an excuse for gossip. Columnists hinted at her strange friendships and her reluctance to marry. Studio handlers pushed her toward staged romances with men, including John Gilbert and Leopold Stokowski. But Garbo resisted. She despised fakery, even when it was for her own protection. The tension bled into her work. While Queen Christina dazzled in 1933, some critics noted the boldness of her androgynous performance, reading into her regal command and the kiss with her lady-in-waiting as more than acting. Privately, Garbo loved the ambiguity. Publicly, MGM worried it was too daring. She was asked to soften her image, to appear in more conventional roles. By the late 1930 seconds, cracks appeared. Films like Conquest, 1937, disappointed at the box office. Whispers of her being difficult grew louder. In 1938, she was branded box office poison alongside Katharine Hepburn and Joan Crawford. The title stung, not just because of lost revenue, but because it mirrored her inner isolation. Behind the scenes, her relationship with Mercedes D'Acosta frayed under secrecy and strain. Letters grew bitter. Trust eroded. Garbo retreated further into solitude. She fought with MGM over scripts, often rejecting projects. To executives, she was ungrateful. To Garbo, she was simply trying to preserve her dignity. The Hollywood machine demanded constant exposure, but she longed for privacy. The consequence was fewer roles, fewer allies, and a reputation as a recluse. By 1941, after the lukewarm reception of Two-Faced Woman, she made the fateful decision to walk away from Hollywood. After her sudden retirement in 1941, Greta Garbo vanished from the screen, but not from the imagination of the public. She slipped into private life in New York City, moving into an apartment on East 52nd Street. There, among art books, modern paintings, and a quiet view of the East River, she built a new kind of existence, one defined by privacy and routine. The woman who once commanded sound stages now walked the streets in oversized sunglasses and scarves, a shadow among crowds. Neighbors often saw her on long solitary walks through Central Park or browsing art galleries. She rarely granted interviews, and when approached, she would turn away with a faint smile or a cold silence. To the press, she became the ultimate enigma. To her friends, she remained witty, affectionate, and deeply private. Her circle was small, but meaningful. Cecil Beaton, the British photographer, adored her and recorded both his devotion and his frustration when she pulled away. Mercedes D'Acosta, though estranged, lingered in Garbo's memory. Later companions, like wealthy art dealer George Schlee, filled her life with travel and companionship, though the press still speculated endlessly. Garbo spent long summers in the south of France, winters in New York, and occasional trips to Switzerland. She cultivated her garden, read voraciously, and collected impressionist paintings that would later be valued in the millions. To outsiders, it looked like a lonely exile. To Garbo, it was freedom the first time she could live without scripts, studios, or fabricated romances. Yet she was not immune to change. The world shifted around her. By the 1960 seconds, conversations about sexuality had begun to stir more openly, though still fraught with prejudice. Younger stars like Montgomery Clift and Rock Hudson faced the same burdens she had carried. Garbo, however, never publicly addressed her private life. When asked why she never married, she simply said she never found the right person. In 1954, The Academy honored her with an Oscar for her unforgettable screen performances. She did not attend. Greta Garbo's life was more than stardom. It was a study in silence, secrecy, and survival. She carried the burden of a hidden love, the weight of fame, and the loneliness of self-protection. The diaries she ordered burned at 48 were not just pages of passion. They were proof of how much could never be spoken in her time. Her story reminds us of the cost of image in old Hollywood, where studios dictated desire and society punished truth. Yet Garbo endured. She lived on her own terms, retreating when the world demanded too much, preserving her dignity even in solitude. When we watch her now, in Camille or Queen Christina, we see more than an actress. We see a woman who gave everything on screen while holding back everything off it. A woman who loved, who longed, who remained forever mysterious. Perhaps that is her greatest legacy, not only the films she left behind, but the courage to remain herself, even in silence. If this story moved you, share your thoughts in the comments. Which Garbo performance lingers most for you? And be sure to subscribe, because more hidden Hollywood stories await.